Hey, it's me, Sick. I'll watch a horror movie every evening for 1 week and see how this impacts my emotional well-being and if I become a more scared person in general. Since I'm stuck in a hotel room for a week, I might as well do this. I used to be a fan of horror flicks. In my 20s, I went religiously to our small town cinema every single week to watch the sneak preview, and very often this would be one of the newest horror movies way before release date. But right around when I became a dad, I suddenly stopped watching horror flicks. I guess I had other things on my mind then. I found a nice list on IMDb, best horror movies of the past decade. This also pretty much makes sure these are all new to me and I haven't seen them yet. So I started my first evening with this movie, The Conjuring. As I said, I'm not a native English speaker. My viewing experience was kind of weird, because for the first time watching a horror movie, I paid attention and tried to listen to my body. And I don't know if some of those really old school scares in this movie got me that good because I was so focused on my own body, but just look at this. I felt being really tense and felt like being in a state of constant alert. After the movie, I feel a little mad that my body betrayed me, because in the past I used to be really good in calling jump scares way ahead, but this time they almost all the time got me. So it seems that skill has been lost in the past decade. After that, I got a good night of sleep, no weird dreams, and the next morning I was in a pretty good mood. How's that with you guys? Do you enjoy a good scare, or do you really hate horror movies? According to a study from 2010 by Dr. Margie Kerr, if you hate it, that usually has one of two reasons. First thing is, some people enjoy intensive feelings more than others, which is described as the need for effect. And it's stronger or less strong with some people. Like riding a roller coaster. For people who love controlled scares and being pushed to the limit, it's really enjoyable, even though they're scared, and we get a nice dopamine kick. While for other people, a roller coaster ride is just pure horror. Second, some people made bad experiences with horror movies or scary stories, or as kids with super scary fairy tales. Very common in Germany. We have the most violent fairy tales there are. So the horror movies remind them of something negative. This is called conditioning. I love roller coasters and horror movies, even though my first experience with a horror movie wasn't that great. My parents were partying at the neighbors, my little brother was sleeping, and 11 or 12-year-old Sig snuck downstairs into the living room to watch a great movie he heard older kids talk about, Alien. I watched it from the beginning to the end, being scared but fascinated. But when I had to sneak back into my bed, in every dark corner of the house, something seemed to be watching me, preying on me. I hardly slept that night, and it took quite some time before I could sneak around in the dark again. And now I love dark sci-fi movies. And I'm lucky. It is scientifically proven that watching such movies underaged, because of peer pressure, challenges, or whatever, can cause real traumata. Especially in a social event, or when a small kid hanging out with bigger kids. Very often kids will keep sitting, struggling, having a hard time coping with what they're seeing. So never try to peer pressure somebody watching with you, and even congratulate them if they say, hey, this is too much for me, I'm out of here. Day 2 I decided to watch a movie I heard my colleagues rave about, A Quiet Place. This movie drew me in. I was so hyper-focused all the time, sometimes holding my breath in sync with the actors. I loved the movie, but it kind of pulled my brain into a spin. After the movie I was walking around the room, And when it happened, I dropped my phone. And with my mind still being occupied by the movie's premise, that bang of a falling phone sounded to me like a freaking cannon shot. I froze for a moment, and then I felt the adrenaline rushing through my veins. These are pure human instincts. Our brains are not made for media consumption. They are made for dangerous environments and the outdoors. You know that what you've seen in a movie was just a play, but your instincts will still make you go stiff because a non-moving object is harder to see by a predator. Your pulse is rising, getting your body ready for action. Fleeing or fighting, what's it going to be? With our body in such a high state of alert, we are ready to conquer any threat coming our way. And good filmmakers use this. And with all that adrenaline then rushing through my body, it was super hard to go to sleep that evening. With the third movie, I felt ready for something else. Hereditary was voted the best horror movie of the last decade, so I was really up for watching it. And boy, it was a great movie. It had good scares and the ending surprised me. I really loved it. After the movie, I felt ecstatic and happy. This is not a movie which should make me happy and mellow, I think. Shouldn't I be feeling different? Why am I so happy? Again, my brain is tricking me. Psychiatrist Dr. Catherine Brownlow of Ohio State University found out that our brain eases us after a scary occurrence or a good horror movie. It releases dopamine to make us feel good and happy after the bad and scary situations we just faced. And according to her, you can even make that work for you. A horror movie can make your mind go calm and kind of prepare you for situations where you're really afraid of. A talk with your boss, an important phone call, or going on a stage in front of a huge crowd. You'll approach the situation much calmer after watching a horror movie, because for our brain we've just already been through something so much more scary. So, hey, what comes next can only be a piece of cake. Horror movies can have a positive effect and even be healthy for horror fans. This weird thesis is actually scientific proof. Watching horror movies can raise the immunity levels of your body, since getting your body in a state of higher alertness triggers the production and activation of more white blood cells. According to another study from 2021, you burn as much calories during a horror movie than you would with a 30-minute hike. The fourth movie I watched was Smile, which was okay, but nothing really great. I just loved the cover art. But now, in the middle of the week, I can feel the push that horror movies are giving me. I realize that I'm more productive and more awake after watching those movies. I'm in a really good mood and I have thousands of great ideas. The weird thing is, the scarier the movie, the more I can still feel those effects the next day. But it's not all light and shiny. Studies show that movies, not only horror movies, can inflict or implant new fears into us. Imagine an ultra-realistic scene where a dog kills a human. And it can happen that suddenly somebody who never ever was afraid of dogs in his entire life suddenly feels a bit scared when one of our four-legged friends is around him. So this is why this new trend to ultra-realistic horror flicks also has a huge downside. Next movie was It Follows. And wow, that one was super immersive. And I felt really pushed after that one. But I had to go to bed early that day, and I decided to go for a walk and had the whole time the feeling that something was following me. Isn't it crazy how our brain betrays us constantly with things like that? Did you know that our brain saves scary memories completely different than other information? Conscious memories we save in the explicit part of our brain. Here everything gets stored that we learn on purpose, like people we meet, where we have been, where we put our keys. In our implicit memory, the subconscious, we save things that steer our behaviors, but also abilities like riding a bike, swimming, or driving a car, and our fears. And here's the interesting thing: people who suffer from memory loss or from dementia, who cannot recall anything new, can still build up things they are afraid of. If they hurt themselves in a certain situation, like, for example, stepping in a rusty nail in the garden, they will move more cautious the next time when they're at the very same place, even though they cannot remember why they are doing this. Even though the memory is lost, they still know in their subconscious that there is something to be afraid of that might cause pain. A scary memory is not forgotten that easy. So, I've finished the challenge. And beside that one night, I slept really well. My love for horror movies basically got reignited. I felt much more chill. I finished this week with lots of fun, and I'm planning rewatching some of those old horror flicks I basically grew up with. I felt less stressed, even though this was a really hardcore work week, and I even found a study who proves that this is a thing, and even more. Fans of horror movies are getting stressed less easy by crises, like COVID, for example. A study from the year 2020 shows that horror fans, but especially fans of zombie movies, had it much easier to cope with the new pandemic situation. And honestly, when I think back, I can confirm this. It kind of felt familiar, since I had faced similar pandemic situations in movies. My brain already had pre-simulated situations like this, so it wasn't that scary and I could adapt much more easily. Isn't that crazy? So facing fear in movies can help us to deal with fear in general. So we're basically getting trained to control our fears and simulate situations in the closed comfort zones of our living room or a cinema seat. So people who watch tons of horror movies have a better control of their fears, are more chill, but as long as it's an adult watching. A study from 2021 shows that horror movies can impact your psychological well-being in a tremendous negative way if you are younger than 17 years old, and it can cause exactly the opposite effects than to grown-up brains. So I watched 7 horror movies in 7 days, reignited my love for horror movies, learned a lot about my fears and reactions my body has to certain circumstances. Let me know in the comments what movies I should watch next, if you enjoy horror movies as much as I do, or why you hate them. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.